Hi everyone, Mel here, and hopefully you heard the introduction that I did on midlife. Well, it was a bit more an introduction. So you may be getting this in audio or you may be getting this in visual because I've decided that now that I seem to go through different phases, that actually it works to record late at night. My brain seems to be operating differently recently. So, as I said in the introduction, I'm Mel, and I've worked in mental health and wellbeing for over 25 years with adults, with children, professionals, and my last sort of job project was ended in 2022. I took a bit of time out and then I started experimenting with different things that I'd learned how to do, and exploring different topics that either affect my clients or that are happening at the moment for a lot of people, or even that are personal to me. So I decided that I would start a new series on midlife. So in the introduction, I talked a little bit about, what I was like in terms of thinking about midlife, which I didn't. I wasn't really thinking about that much to do with periods or menopause or perimenopause. I was quite focused for a long time on preventative health measures and well-being, because I worked alongside public health in 2014 when I worked for a local authority, and they used to have all the data of the kind of big issues and what the numbers were in each locality, like London, Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, of what the health conditions were like for the population, and the big ones like diabetes, cancer, heart conditions. And we know now more and more with the research that there is a correlation between them. They're not all separate things. But of course, around 2014, 2015 as well, is when the whole idea of mental health and well-being became, there was a lot on the news about it, in the papers, magazines were all talking about it more. And we were talking about well-being, and well-being practices started to really come to the forefront. And then I think I started to notice about 20, I think it was about 2021, when a lot more was being said about midlife. Research was being released about women in the workplace and what employers needed to know. And again, I was kind of seeing it, but in some ways didn't really want to engage with it. I didn't want to think about this stage of my life that I wasn't looking forward to. This idea of how it's been presented as 10 years of hell and sweats and changing habits and all that kind of stuff, this kind of narrative that we've been sold. And I oscillate between this idea that, if we believe everything we read, it can become part of our consciousness, and it doesn't mean to say it's true. And the placebo effect is very strong, that if we believe something in a different way, we can literally have a big impact on our body. And there's a lot of research to show that. But can we alter the processes in our body that makes us who we are as humans? I don't know, but I know that there's a lot of research coming through now about how we can have better experiences than the ones that have been predicted in previous decades. That you were literally wrote off as a woman at 50, your husband might, run away, buy a sports car, and seek a younger wife. Potentially that still goes on. And and we'd be cast into the net of the forgotten. And this is kind of what I was seeing. And it was very rare when I was growing up for there to be single women. Excuse me. Women often didn't divorce and didn't live with their husbands till the kids grown up, gone to university. But of course, we've seen massive changes in the last few decades. So I'm covering midlife in general and what that constitutes from different angles, but also from my own experience of working in mental health and well-being, working as a therapist, as a coach, running services, working alongside clinical staff, research, and maybe some of what I share with you, you resonate with, and it'll be helpful. And also, I want to bring in other holistic practitioners so they can give me their stance as a woman, and also in line with what products they sell and how they help people. I've actually got a mic I can turn on and off now. That's quite handy. So, this episode, 12 things I didn't know about midlife. So, like I said, even 2016, when I started to think about, I'm getting older now, what do I want to do? Do I want to carve out, a side hustle? We weren't even using that word back then. Nobody was working from home. Working was unheard of unless you was a CEO flying all around the world. And if you worked in a local authority and for the NHS, you knew that you were paying into your pension. You could draw that down, and private pensions when you're 55 have a lump sum and maybe work 2 or 3 days a week. So we knew that we were working maybe towards this point in time that makes us start thinking about, if we've had children, have they grown up, they've gone to uni, have they had kids, where are they? What's our financial situation look like, and what do we want in the coming years? And how do we maintain our health and prevent our health from getting worse or having any illnesses that might run in the family? So, like I said, this has been more of a recent thought process for me. So I'm going to be sharing some of the ways that I look at things through the therapy, spiritual psychology lenses, as well as the women I come into contact with, and what I see around relationships and work and hobbies. And that kind of, if you've ever seen a coaching wheel, I always look at all these different facets of our life, our spiritual life, money, work, relationships, hobbies, time to self, and really very few people, my mom didn't really get time to herself till she was in her 50s. And she was exhausted and loved the peace and quiet and didn't want to spend much time with people. And many of us now are feeling exhausted, because women were sold this idea in the 80s about working to the top and having a great career. But at the same time, if you had children, you also ran family life, had a career, still did the shopping, and this sort of double deal that we've been handed. Or you're a single parent and trying to do it on your own, as I've done for the last 25 years. So, so this is welcome to the Midlife series. And I've been living it and learning and diving into a bit of the research and unraveling some of what I'm hearing and seeing, and sometimes swearing my way through what this phase of life actually feels like. And not what the self-help books promise or promote, and not what Instagram sort of wisdom or nuggets that you get, but actually what it's really like. And it's different. The only common factor with my friends is that we're women, but they've had different messages about what midlife and menopause and perimenopause and health and well-being, all of that. They've had different messages about that. Some of them come from different countries where it's aging as a woman is viewed differently. So in my explorations, it was great to talk to other women, and I'm going to have some guests on my podcasts where I'll be finding out more about them, how they work, and what they do to help people. So this is about, I don't know what's going on in my body. I don't know most of the time. I've had a Dexcom, which is that little thing that you put on your arm and you can monitor your blood sugars. So I could see what happened when I had a plate of rice and whether my blood sugar raised, and then what happened when I went for a walk or went to the gym and how it lowered again. But in terms of hormones, often they only give you one blood test, and it'd be great if I could do a few blood tests over the month so I could see what was happening to my body and whether there was a correlation between the days I get where I'm massively switched on. I get all these ideas and I write things and type and pull it all together, and I can sit at my desk and I can do 12 hours straight, focused, uninterrupted, and produce. I can do that. I've done that several times. I've done it for 2 days, and then I've crashed for 3 days. I might have gone for a walk, gone to the gym, but I go like this, these cycles. So we can put that down to different things. And part of what I teach now isn't just how do we create this plan for 30 days to improve our health and well-being and feel happier and more content about life, but how do we also value the strains that we've carried for a long time? Things take their toll, whether it is losing people in our lives through, we experience grief and loss and hardships and sick children or things that have happened to us and our wider family system. And these things take their toll, especially if we haven't had people to talk to and we've been too busy just trying to earn a living and paying the rent, and the bills. As well as what we carry, I believe, from our mothers and our mothers' mothers, of all that stuff that they carried because women had less opportunities and less options. Even my mum, she didn't have anywhere near the options that I did. I was able to come out of similar circumstances that she was in and study and start to create a life. I didn't quite know where it was going when I did that, but I was able to do that. I got some funding, so I was able to do it without it costing too much money, and became an avid researcher after that. And I've listened to thousands of podcasts and personal development because it was all about, a lot of it initially was about how can I feel happier and better and more satisfied in my life? What is it I need to do? So I never teach anything that I haven't tried myself. And a lot of the times I'm still trying myself. And that's why I came out with these 30-day programs. So I was thinking, what are the there's probably more than 12, but I'll start with 12. I like the number 12 about midlife that I've kind of thought about in the last few years. Some surprising, some painful, some beautiful. Well, number one, if you've had children in your 20s, they're growing up and they're leaving, they're going to university. And so for a lot of people, they can have that emptiness syndrome. I didn't have that emptiness. I felt a bit guilty. It was great when my eldest son moved out and my youngest son went to uni. I missed him, but I just loved the peace and the silence and 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 just being in my own space and walking around the house in how I wanted and just getting the food I wanted. And it was very different and I did enjoy that. I thought maybe I won't after a few months, but I did. It carried on. But for a lot of people, if your whole life has been focused on bringing up your children and you've either had no career or your career's been secondary, or you've had a part-time job, as a lot of women did, and the whole focus has gone into their children, of course, that's a big shift and a big loss. But it's also a place where relationships have either got static or stuck. And I've worked with a few clients that have been in long-term relationships and they come to this point of just homeostasis where they're living as two independent people in a house and no one's really thriving. So I've seen that a lot with my clients. So it's, for some, it's a midlife crisis, but I don't think many of us are calling it crisis now. It's a midlife emergence, a midlife possibility to reinvent ourselves, wear what hair color we want, decide whether we have thin or thick eyebrows, decide whether we wear lipstick or not, or makeup, decide how we want to work out. Do we want to do slow routines? Start to think about the friends that we're hanging out with, and do we want to keep listening to somebody that is constantly complaining about their life? Do we want to take up a new hobby? These extra moments of time gives a chance to reflect and think about all our facets of our life. And there's no one road. But what I often say to people is, if you're happy and healthy and you're fine and you're enjoying what you're doing, great. But if you're not and you're depressed and anxious, that's your soul calling for you to look at yourself in your life and see what even small changes you can make. So midlife's not like an arrival point, or when I was in my 20s thought it was a death point, why we're still alive past 30. Sounds really horrible, but I know lots of people think of things like that. It's the next round of questioning in Carl Jung had these life phases. It's where we start to use our knowledge and our experiences and turn that into some useless wisdom that I usefully share with people at times. And I think also I find myself quietening down. I went through this phase of everything that I learned I wanted to share with everybody and teach. Even though I teach yoga and I do some workshops, and then I started feeling like I was going into this more quieter phase of wanting to facilitate, because you start to realize that people are at their own stage of their journey. And lots of women realise that actually you should never get with someone and then think you're going to make loads of changes about them, because then that just becomes a project. And men don't necessarily want to be projects. And do we want a project outside, alongside work and everything else? But it gets us questioning about our role. What does it mean to be a woman? And what is it about our work? And what messages have we received about ourselves and our existence in the world? And are they true, or are they just passed down? Because that's how we pass down information. And what does it mean for where I am now and who I am in the world? And sometimes that's why it helps to do things like personal development. So I love the gene keys and I love human design. I can't do my own human design. It's a bit technical. There's a few practitioners out there that will look at your birth date and your chart. It's much deeper than astrology. The idea is that we have this basic blueprint, and you read it and you go, wow, yeah, I can really resonate with that. So it's more about that getting to know more about me thing, who is it, what goes through my head, how do I tick, what negative forces and thoughts are going through. And I was having a conversation with a colleague today, and we were talking about how lots of people don't end up pursuing things because they're scared of getting it wrong, making a mistake, or someone else taking the mick. And like, I don't know if you ever saw the film Educating Rita. I always go back to that and Shirley Valentine, because to me it epitomised the way things were when I was growing up in the North. That you'd have somebody that was at home all the time, they were bored, mindless, and that's how that film was portrayed. As long as she had her husband's dinner on the table when he got back, there was, nothing was ever questioned. And she wanted to go to uni. She wanted to do a college course, and it was like, go to college. What do you want to go to college for? And it was like you'd have to deal with these actual verbal forces and invisible forces of either your dad's or your husband's. And luckily, I had neither around at the time. And my mum was very much about having many strings to your bow, because she didn't want me to ever end up in circumstances like she did, where it was really difficult to, make any money really. And so I had that instilled in me from a really young age. So again, it's about the messages that you get, that you can't, I guess the subliminal message was you can't wait for a man to come into your life, and you can't depend on them all the time. Some you can, and this isn't about castigating men as bad or evil or anything, but you should know how to depend on yourself, how to pay your own bills, how to manage your own money, how to manage fairly your finances. Um, when you're in a couple, and so many women were in relationships where the husband gave them just about enough money to put some food on the table and nothing else for many years. So it's about those roles and where you fit and how you view yourself and what you think now, and learning about yourself through your own astrology, human design, the gene keys. I love that. It's deep, the gene keys, and personal psychology and the different theories around being human. So it's not a crisis necessarily. It might be just an opportunity now for you to review. And also, are your aches and pains because you're not getting enough nutrition? You're not getting enough sleep, drinking enough water. You're getting migraines because you're not getting enough water. That is a direct correlation. Um, are your aches and pains because you're not stretching enough? You walk a lot. Or is it because actually it is the hormones? And that's the thing we don't always know. And that's why we've got to have a two or three-pronged approach to our mental health and well-being. So hormones are not a subplot. They are a full-on character act, aren't they? In terms of our mood, our sleep, memory, skin, digestion. I was listening to, I'm going to put the link below here actually, because she was excellent. She's got a PhD in neuroscience, I think, but she's talking about women in the menopause, and that was the most sense I'd listened to in ages, actually, because it was really digestible information she was sharing, but about how all of this is affected our skin, our digestion, and the phases that we go through. And we haven't just not had a manual, we've just not had places to talk about it, because we've been shamed to not talk about periods. And I was doing a panel last summer, and in this panel, I was asked to talk to a lady for to do like a live podcast. She was talking about periods, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've just got my head around talking around midlife and the menopause. And now I'm going to be talking about period in front of people. So, but like with anything, we were taught at college that what you avoid is usually what you've got to um, dive into. So bear with me, I need a water. One of the guys that I do a podcast with, Chris Champion, he's always got these massive gallons of water. I can't remember where he said he but gets his water from, but he's really pro making sure you drink lots of water to clean out our system. So hormones, mood, sleep, memory, digestion. And when I put the link below, because I think there's a lot of information out there, but we also need to see how we've been brainwashed. I used to go to the gym and do 40 minutes, a mixture on the treadmill, the cross trainer, the rower, 40 minutes hard at it, like this, pumping away in the gym. And then weights, 3 sets of weights, 3 times, 4 times a week. So no wonder I put my body under stress, because you're already in a stressful place. You're releasing all these. Now we know you're releasing more cortisol and it's not actually beneficial. So the advice we've been getting when you're over 40 and 50, where you need to exercise and do movement, we know that movement's really important and heart health and walking, but it kind of does change every few years and it can get really confusing. So we need to listen to credible people who are looking at the research and what can help. Then, of course, we can go through changes in our friendships or just do a complete cull. That the friends that kind of text you, how are you doing? I've been worried about you. And then you don't hear from them for 2 months. Um, and then other friends who spend a hell of a lot of time focused on themselves or complaining about life or are just generally miserable, or other friends that you like spending time with, but they're too distant. So you start reflecting on the nature of what energy you've got, how full your energy is, and where you expend your energy. So I say to people, if you imagine that every minute of you sharing your energy with someone is £1, how much money are you wasting if that is not a reciprocal natured relationship? Because you can occasionally have people that need more of you than you do them, and that's okay because friendships go through cycles as well. But if it's continuous and you feel exhausted after being with someone, then you need to seriously think about how you're giving your energy away for free, and think about who you're spending time with and what you're doing. And that can make a big difference to the quality of your life, the people around you. So friendships can change. Like I said, some deepen, some drift, and some disappear. So you learn to hold both the grief and the gratitude together, because gratitude is really important. So it sounds like a tree thing or a small thing, but actually waking up in the morning and having a look around at what you're grateful for and what you have managed to achieve is really important. And the research is showing how that sets us up for the day. Now, the key one that I've been focusing on even more recently, but I started after my car accident because my training looked at the intellectual, the emotional, the physical to a degree, the spiritual. But the accident really forced me to tune into my body, because every morning I woke up, I was sore. It was like body whiplash. And so I was doing a lot of stretching. I do some yoga, and initially it was like yin yoga, very gentle stretching. And and in previous times prior to that, going to the gym, hardcore, pushing through all the time. And so I started really noticing the days where I felt really heavy, the days where I felt okay, what helped me lift. It took after a while of doing yoga nearly every day, I do different stretches. I started to notice how quick I lifted, and it was like having one of those bobs in the water that you let it go and it floats up to the surface. And I could feel my energy doing that. So I started to see the value of that routine that I had in the morning. I went through copious amounts of bath salts, Himalayan and Epsom salts, because I was so stiff and sore. I actually remember I bought several times 10-kilo bags on Amazon. Had them in. I still have stuff in my bath, but I went through a lot. So I was using these different things to help and tune into the body and try and get the balance with, because when you've had an accident, you've had chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, you spend a lot of time just not having the energy to do barely anything. But it can become a trap because you're not moving, so you lose power and you lose muscle tone and things like that. So it's a real vicious circle when you're in it. So we've got to be mindful that when you do get up, people can get oscillate between having loads of energy and no energy. So you've got to be mindful when you get up of not trying to do millions of things with the energy that you've got, because you can easily reactivate your stress system, and then that reactivates all the stress hormones, and you go through this cycle. And I've been through that cycle several times. So what can really help is, if you've got time, because if you've still got small children, it's different. But even if you can get up before the children by 15 minutes and have a bath, and which can be impossible to do, granted. But if you get up and the house is quiet and you sit and you make like a herbal tea, or just sit there and tune into something like a nice ornament, a candle, look out the window at the trees blown in the wind or something, and start focusing on your breath. And as you focus on your breath, take your awareness, like take your consciousness down to your legs, to your hips, to your shoulders, and ask yourself, where do I feel heavy? Where do I feel light? What does my body need today? And the more we do that, the more we're able to say, right, I'm going to go to the gym. Yeah, I'm going to have a workout. Or no, I'm going to have a gentle swim. Or no, I'm just going to sit in the sauna. Or I'm going to lie on the sofa. I'm very tired today, especially, like me, if I've had a very active weekend. So we need to use breath to connect ourselves, take our awareness out of our mind, out of all the busy thoughts. Even putting your hand on your heart and noticing your breath coming in and out of your body helps you tune in. And if you practice that for 5 minutes every day, you can really start to connect with the variation of what you're experiencing, and even relate that in many ways to your own cycle. If you draw, now we're in November, say, or December, 1 to 30, and you go, oh, today felt really heavy. And you get to day 14, and if you're getting periods or you're still getting the signs, okay, now I know that the week before I was more moody, I was more vocal, I was more quiet. So you tune into your body, because so many women are used to pushing hard. We must work hard and push through. And that means we can override fatigue. And I have overrode fatigue a lot. So now I track it, because now my energy feels like a rare stone. I don't want to just give rare stones away anymore. I don't want to. So I want to spend the time with people where it's easy, it flows, there's laughter and lightness. Because I actually do like spending time a lot on my own. I write, I create things, and I love doing that. So now I'm becoming more precious about where I am and who I'm spending that time with. And like I said, my camper van's not well at the moment. So I've lost my sort of temple, my studio, because my son came back from university, like a lot of us have got grown-up children living at home. So it's about listening to the body. And then 5 is joy can become quieter, you know, like deeper, like a deeper sense. So when I get up in the morning, the way the light comes through into my living room, it's just got this beautiful hue. My living room, it's lovely. It looks lovely at that time of the day. And then I've got a really nice, decent office chair downstairs that goes back. I chose it so I could lie back in it, because I used to have these times in the day where my eyelids were really heavy and I'd have to close my eyes. And I started setting the phone for 20 minutes. I started taking the 20-minute nap approach, and it did make a big difference. I would just feel revitalized. Um, so I love just lying back in the chair, putting on my headphones with some relaxing music, and just go into that zone. But that when I started to catch up with the rest that I needed, then I just used to like sitting in the chair And there's a certain time of the day, especially in the back, where the trees are blowing, and I love that sound. And when I tune into that, it actually changes your brain waves. I was doing some research about that because I was like, why do I love that sound so much? But it gets me in a really meditative state. But you've got to start the process first. You've got to start practicing just noticing what chair feels nice when you sit in it. Um, a good stretch. So I like to do not just get the tightness out of my body, because if I've done a lot of walking, I go through those cycles. Um, have a really good stretch, maybe play some good music, go in I buy these fresh loaves every few days, and I love making toast out of them. Or sometimes I have a lot of smoothies that I make. I often don't eat until about 12 o'clock. But I just really, when you do mindfulness, you focus on savoring the taste of the fresh bread or the smoothie or the berries or whatever. You slow it all down and your senses start to wake up in a different way. And one of the mindfulness exercises we used to do in groups, we give people a piece of chocolate, but you'd have to let that chocolate slowly just melt on your tongue and see what you noticed, the sensations. And that's a lovely thing about mindfulness, because it does help slow things down. So you can experience that really nice, quiet joy. So, noticing that, even if you said, so now what we're building up is a bit of this, how can you create this routine wherever you are in life, is when you wake up in the morning, rather than thinking about all the things that could go wrong, sit in your favorite chair, have a nice cup of tea, savor something, a biscuit, or just watch the trees and have that mindful moment, and notice what happens if you start practicing that. And if you've got lots of things in your head that lists are important, they can help. And then grief walks with you, not behind you. Is something, you know, when I talk to clients or friends and I say, out of everything I've done in the last 30 years, I think grief has been one of the hardest things that I've tried to cope with, and that in working with clients. And there are, of course, lots of other things, but losing somebody that's important to you, I don't believe it's anything you ever get over, that you just time heals. I don't feel like it's healed. I might just not wait. I might not have those dreams. And in fact, I had a dream about my mum the other night. And in the dream, she's alive. Um, and we're doing something in the dream. She's there in this space. Then I wake up, and when this started happening after she passed, and she passed in 2005, but it was an anniversary recently. Um, I would dream about her and then wake up and go through that grief again every time. The emotions were raw. But we've all experienced loss and change, and even if you've separated from somebody that you can't stand anymore, um, you can experience grief about that. It can throw us. It can sort of throw us off guard in a minute, in a way, because we just think, oh, good riddance, they've gone. But actually, we're grieving the identity that was associated with who we are in that relationship. So be really gentle with yourself. And I've got a colleague who does self-compassion courses. She's great. She's got such a gentle way of being, because we have to learn to be compassionate with ourselves, not question, why am I feeling sad or why am I angry? Is just the first step is breathing and acknowledging it and feeling it and noticing it, not judging it, and then it will pass. Where it becomes a problem is when we ignore it and deny it. So also, we can feel invisible. I think I felt invisible most of my life, actually, which I didn't mind. But yeah, there is a lot of women say that all of a sudden, they're overlooked or viewed through the eyes of other people as just somebody old or immaterial, or not valued. They've got nothing to say. So, um, you know, but at the same time, the pressure to perform dulls. And you can get to the stage where you just don't want to perform in any way. You just want to be real and say what you think. And I used to enjoy those films, where you'd see man or a woman, just get to this stage where they just say whatever they think and they don't care about it anymore. It's really freeing. And then creativity, a lot of people I talk to and how I used to feel is I'm not creative. I can't draw. But actually, I've been creative ever since I did this training because I used to design courses for kids around well-being and transition and resilience, and then workshops, and now the 30-day programs and the podcasts. So for now, I'm really creative. Um, and sometimes it takes a bit of time to tap into that. And there's a guy that I know that actually does courses for people who are thinking about leaving their job, but it's not about carving a new job and a new career. This is about them tapping into what really lights them up so that they can really start to enjoy that combination of job, career, and life purpose. So for me, my creativity is channeled into all these different things I do now. But I wasn't like that years ago. I read a lot when I went to college. I really got into reading all sorts of different things, philosophy and religion and psychology. So I did that a lot, did a lot of courses. And then it felt like, because I don't read that much at all now, but I love audio, so I'm always learning. But I like to turn what I've learned now into something that I can channel onto a platform or something. And then resentment. One of the key things that sort of happen in friendships and relationships is if you let things pass and you don't speak your truth, or you keep asking for something and you don't get it, resentment can build. And resentment, like irritation, people really underestimate what is going on when you feel irritated. It's a signal. Resentment, irritation, anxiety, depression, all signals. It's not a flaw, it's your soul asking for you to renegotiate or regenerate or do something differently. So that's when it can help to have a coach or a therapist to help you unpack it, because that means we get our voice out there, and then that mirroring that the therapist does and the questions helps us go a bit deeper. And your stuff doesn't go away. Whatever you've collected over the years, it just shapeshifts. Old patterns in new costumes, similarities in new relationships from previous relationships. But it's good to reflect on the lessons that you've learned, because what you've learned will help you recognize the patterns as soon as they appear. So what you might have put up with before for a few months or a few years, now you won't tolerate at all, especially if you realize your own value, have compassion for yourself, and you just really don't want to attract the same patterns. So sometimes it can feel like it takes time. Some are easier to erase than others. And again, that might be something that we need help with, but we've all got some level of patterns. People pleasing, fitting particular roles that don't suit us, or taking careers that we never wanted to do, but somebody else thought it was a route to go down. Silence rather than speaking up, or um, getting caught in resentment and building those things for days, patterns of communication. And again, it might be that you need help with that. And time can feel strange. I mean, oh my goodness, I look at my lads, and many of us do, and go, where did those 30 years go? It's really bizarre. It's horrible sometimes. I look at that and I'm like, because when the kids are little, you're so busy, time flies because you're in a constant state of go. You know, I rarely stopped. I remember I couldn't even have a lock on the bathroom door because my son used to turn the taps on really strong and then sometimes lock himself in. So I couldn't have a lock on the door. So just even going to the toilet for 5 minutes, time out, was a challenge. So from 6 in the morning till 7 at night, it was like constantly on the go until they got a bit older and they were up more. So yeah, sometimes it feels like today felt very long, like I fit in a lot today. Um, and you can start craving a pace that matches you. Now, I can't remember what year it was, but I remember one year I felt desperate for space and time. I can't remember if I'd already split up with my partner. I must have done. My mother-in-law, my kids used to go to my mother-in-law's most weekends, but I really got to the stage of just feeling desperate for peace and space. I think I was exhausted. So I booked myself a holiday. I went to Ibiza on my own for, I think, a week and spent a lot of it in the hotel sleeping and going on the beach and not doing that much, but just having that headspace. And I've had that a few times in my life, because I think you don't realize some of us can just keep giving out. I gave a lot into my job and in the things that I was doing. So like I said, midlife isn't a crisis. It can be a convergence where everything that you've lived starts showing up. And I know that it was really common when I was growing up. My mum would often say that all the problems and everything came in when they got into their 50s. But of course, they were a different generation where they didn't talk about feelings, and you had to just get up and brush yourself down and go to work. Even if your leg was hanging off, you still have to get into work and earn some money. So, does this land with you? Can you resonate with anything that I've said? What stands out for you? What would you like to hear more about, when I get some guests on? What's midlife? Are you going through it? Are you thinking about it now? Are you like me? You just didn't want to think about it? Are you starting to notice? Are you getting some support? I'm going to put some links here for really good quality information around different things to be aware of, because apparently most GPs, I think the lady said, I don't know if there was America or the UK, 1 in 5 GPs do anything to do with menopause. Can you believe that? We're going to doctors to get advice and they don't know anything. That's not been trained in it. And I certainly know that when I was working in NHS, I used to work alongside Health Education England, and they were the ones that trained nurses and doctors. They weren't even trained in mental health, and yet they're doing anxiety pills and depression pills, and those trying to get into a GP surgery to deliver training on basic mental health was incredibly difficult. So hopefully you've liked this episode. Leave some comments, let me know what you thought, and I look forward to having another chat about midlife